Here's something that quietly separates the people who build real wealth from the people who don't. It's not how much they earn, it's the order they do things in. And nowhere does that show up more than the ISA versus pension question. Here's how strong the pull is. When people get asked where they'd save a spare grand for retirement, pension or stocks and shares ISA, the big majority go for the ISA. Almost 3 in 4. And I get it. It feels safer. It feels like yours. But is the crowd actually right? Because that one instinct, followed blindly, can cost you a 6-figure sum over a working life. So let's settle it. By the end, you'll know exactly which to fund first, for your salary, your goals, your situation. Not a vague, one-size-fits-all answer. Yours, just a quick reminder. Nothing in this video is financial advice. It's purely for educational purposes, and you should always do your own research before making any financial decisions. Let's strip these two things right down, because underneath all the noise, they're basically the same product flipped. A stocks and shares ISA. You pay in with money that's already been taxed. It grows, and no matter how big it gets, everything you take out is completely tax-free, and you can access it whenever you want. There's no age lock, it's yours on your terms. A pension is the mirror image. You pay in before tax, so the government tops it up on the way in. It grows, and then it's taxed when you take it out in retirement, and that's the whole thing. Pay your tax now or pay it later. One gives you freedom, the other gives you a tax break but locks the money away. Neither is better. They're built for different jobs. Before you choose between them, there's one move that beats both. And most people walk straight past it. The employer match. If you're employed, you've probably been auto-enrolled into a workplace pension. That system's been running since 2012. The minimum is you put in 5%, and your employer adds 3%. But plenty of employers will match you higher than that. Put in more, they put in more. Think about what that actually is. If your employer matches your money, you've just doubled it. Instantly. That's a 100% return before your investments have grown by a single penny. Nothing else in personal finance does that. Nothing. And here's a quick tool that shows how mad it is. It's called the Rule of 72. Take 72, divide it by your yearly return, and that's roughly how many years your money takes to double. At a solid 9% a year, that's about 8 years to double your money the normal way. Your employer doubles it on day one. This is where you think like an athlete. A good one never leaves a free, guaranteed gain sitting on the table. So, step 1. Always find out what your employer will match and take every single penny of it. If they'll match up to 6% and you're only putting in 5%, you're turning down a pay rise. Now, you've probably heard the big argument against pensions. It goes like this. What's the point of the tax relief going in if you just get taxed on the way out? They give with one hand and take with the other. It sounds clever. It's also wrong for most people. Let me show you why. That tax relief doesn't just sit there, it gets invested and it compounds for decades alongside everything else. A bigger pot, growing for longer, beats a smaller one, even after you're taxed at the end. Run a simple example. Someone saving a couple of £100 a month from their 20s to their 60s, same growth rate in both accounts. Because the pension gets topped up on the way in, there's more money compounding the entire time, and they can end up with roughly £100,000 more in the pension than in the ISA, for the exact same cost out of their own pocket. The only time the ISA really wins that maths race is one narrow case. You're a basic rate taxpayer the whole time you're saving, and then a higher rate taxpayer in retirement. That's rare. So on pure numbers for building the biggest pot, the pension usually wins. But And this is the whole point of the video, numbers are not the only thing that matter, because the pension has one flaw, and it's a big one. You can't touch it until you're 55, and that's rising to 57 in 2028. Your money is locked. The ISA isn't locked at all, and that flexibility might be worth more than the tax relief. Say you lose your job, or you want to take a year out, or you need to care for a parent, or you just want to walk away from the 9 to 5 at 45 and build something of your own. A pension can't help you with any of that. You physically cannot reach it. An ISA can. It funds the life that happens before retirement age. So hold it in your head like this: money you might need before 57 that lives in the ISA. Money you're happy to lock away and want that tax relief working on that goes in the pension. And honestly, most people want some of both. That's not a compromise. That's the smart answer. Here's a move that sounds small and is actually enormous. It's called the ISA bridge. Picture retiring a few years before your pension unlocks. If all you've got is a pension, you've got two bad options. You either can't get to it, or you're forced to raid it the moment you turn 57 because you need the cash. But if you've got a decent ISA, you live off that for those in-between years, and you leave your pension completely untouched, so it keeps compounding. Look at what that does. A £300,000 pension, left alone for 10 more years at 5% growth, becomes nearly £489,000. That's almost £189,000 extra, just for having an ISA big enough to cover you while the pension keeps working. And there's a hidden trap the ISA helps you dodge. The moment you start flexibly drawing money from a pension, the amount you're allowed to pay back in each year can crash. From £60,000 down to just £10,000. That's brutal if you're still trying to build. The ISA lets you leave the pension sealed, so that trap never springs. There's one more reason to own both, and it only shows up right at the very end, in retirement. When you're drawing an income, having different pots lets you play the tax system legally. Everyone gets a personal allowance. The first £12,570 of income each year is tax-free. Your state pension eats into that. Anything above it that you pull from a pension gets taxed. So here's the move. You draw from the pension up to the point where it stays tax efficient. And then you top up from the ISA, which is always tax-free, instead of pushing yourself into a higher tax band. Having both pots is exactly what gives you that control. One pot on its own simply can't do it. So, let's turn all of this into an order you can actually follow. 1. Grab the full employer match, always. It's the free 100%. 2. Clear any expensive debt. Credit cards, overdrafts, that kind of thing. No investment reliably beats that interest, so clearing it is a guaranteed return. 3. Build a small emergency fund. A few months of essential costs in easy access cash, so life surprises don't force you to sell your investments at the worst possible time. 4. Now split your long-term money between the pension and the ISA using those two questions. What's your tax band, and when might you need the money? And here's the part that matters more than any split. The exact ratio between your ISA and your pension is not what makes you wealthy. Consistency is. The person who picks a sensible, boring split and pays into it every single month for years without flinching when the market wobbles, that person beats the one who hunts for the perfect setup and quits after 3 months. Comfortably. Every time. It's the same as training. The perfect program you quit in February does nothing. The decent program you actually run for a decade changes everything. So don't look for the perfect plan. Find the plan you'll still be running in 10 years' time, and then slowly turn the dial up. A little more with every pay rise. Progressive overload applied to your future. So don't let the ISA versus pension question freeze you. Claim your match. Follow the order, Pick your split and start. You can always adjust as your income grows. Pick one thing from this video and action it this week. Even if it's just checking what your employer will match. That single move might be worth more than everything else you do this year.